Hello, you're listening to a special episode of Popcorn Podcast with Lee and Tim, where we welcome Love Lies Bleeding writer and director Rose Glass.
I'm Timmy Fland, movie buff.
And I'm Lee Livingstone, entertainment journalist.
And we love to talk all things movies. So, Love Lies Bleeding follows reclusive gym manager Lou, who falls hard for Jackie, an ambitious bodybuilder headed through town to Vegas in pursuit of her dream. But their love ignites violence, pulling them deep into the web of Lou's criminal family.
Love Lies Bleeding is directed by Rose Glass from a screenplay by Glass and Weronika Tafilska.
The film stars Kristen Stewart, Katy O'Brian, Dave Franco, Ed Harris, and Jenna Malone.
Now, writer-director Rose Glass is a London-based filmmaker who graduated from the National Film and Television School in 2014. Her shorts have been screened at various festivals, including South by Southwest, Palm Springs Short Fest, and London Short Film Festival.
In 2019, her debut feature Saint Maud premiered in Midnight Madness at the Toronto International Film Festival and was later nominated for not one, but 2 BAFTAs.
Incredible for a debut.
Right.
She's clearly a lover of genre filmmaking, and Glass returns to the director's chair here with the queer crime film Love Lies Bleeding.
This film is a wild, visceral ride from crime to romance, breaking the mold in unexpected ways. It's a fugitive tale that balances many tones from dark humour, which I personally love, romance, and dreamlike fantasy or nightmares, and Glass delivers on all fronts here.
We are just thrilled to welcome Glass to Popcorn Podcast to talk about her sophomore directorial effort, where here she shares what setting the film in the American Midwest offered the story, what Kristen Stewart and Katy O'Brian bring to the roles of Lou and Jackie, and what veteran actor Ed Harris had to say about her directing style. Let's take a listen.
Do you like guns?
I prefer to know my own strength.
That's not what I'm paying you for.
Hi, Rose. Welcome to Popcorn Podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. So I'm kind of hiding under a table, and it's the only place I could plug in my laptop. I'm in a weird Airbnb.
Okay.
So sorry for the weirdness there.
Oh, God, no. I love it. I love it. Almost as much as I love your film, Love Lies Bleeding has to be the best cinema experience that I've had since Dream Scenario a couple of months ago. I was so invested.
Oh, I love that film.
Yeah, isn't it great? I was so invested in your story, in your characters, and how brilliantly you tell it. It's a completely different film to your first. What was it about the American Southwest that caught you? Because I believe you contemplated Scotland initially.
Yes, I think by the time we started writing the script, we'd sort of settled on America in the 80s. But yeah, at first in the brainstorming sort of bit, I was definitely at first assuming we'd shoot it in the UK, just because that's where I am. And somehow I could just really clearly imagine the sort of burly Scottish version of these characters, which I still think would have been great as well. But I think America just sort of made the most sense as the story started to progress, like just the scale of it and the idea of wanting this little town that all takes place in to feel like its own sort of world. And I guess with all the guns and stuff, it made sense. And then once you start putting a film in that time and place in America, it's sort of, you find you've got all these kind of mythology of kind of Americana that's, I don't know, there's just something quite sort of potent and makes it everything a bit more like a kind of a fable or something.
Absolutely.
By having all these very recognizable elements to play with.
Yeah, the Americana is palpable in it, like the guns you said, the desert, the setting, just the general excess that comes from the film.
Well, yeah. Thematically, it sort of made the most sense with Jackie and like, oh, you know.
100%. Did you and co-writer Weronika Tafilska both set out to make a film that balanced so many tones? Because it's so funny, it's violent, it's sexy, it's dreamy as well. Because that's a challenging ambition to pull off. Was that the intention?
I mean, to me, I think a lot of those sorts of elements and genres kind of go hand in hand quite naturally. And I'm sure it has something to do with also the fact that we were co-writing, like Veronika's a writer-director as well. You know, we have a lot of crossover in our taste, but we've got different tastes as well. So that was one of the things that I was sort of hoping would happen from co-writing, because I'd never done it before. Just the fact it opens you up to things that you wouldn't have come up with by yourself necessarily. And I said from the beginning that, I wanted it to be bombastic and kind of pulpy and dark, but also funny. We just kind of gave each other permission to go whichever way the story felt the most exciting and entertaining. I don't know, it was all fairly sort of instinctual and gradual, I guess.
Well, it's good. Listen to your instincts, right? Because then you get a film like yours. It's so good.
Absolutely.
Your film is a cautionary tale in so many ways. And there was one particular red thread around anti-cigarette radio commercials. Was this used, I guess, as an allegory for the dangers of addiction in all its forms? Where did you and Veronica sort of land on that idea?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, like I was struggling to quit smoking for a lot of writing this film. And so, yeah, in the film, Lou, Kristen's character, she's trying to quit smoking and she's listening to this audio book of Alan Carr's Easy Way to Quit Smoking, which I had been reading and had basically, it was the thing which did ultimately get me to quit smoking. And I was kind of, so probably while we were writing it, I was thinking about that. And I think at one point I was like, I should try and make a film of this non-smoking book and try and make it like a film that people can go and watch in the cinema and quit smoking when they come out, kind of thing. Which obviously I didn't do that, but I was like, well, let's try and crowbar it in there. And then thematically it sort of fits quite well. Like, I guess Lou and Jackie, they're sort of like, kind of like a yin and yang thing going on. They're sort of opposites in many ways. And I guess I was like, why is it that one person is able to have such extreme self-discipline? They're able to like transform their body to the degree that Jackie has and becoming a bodybuilder. And yet some of us struggle to even just stop doing the thing that is knowingly killing you. I don't know, something to do with willpower. Willpower's a weird thing. But yeah, thoroughly recommend anybody out there check out Alan Carr's Easy Way to Quit Smoking.
Do you know what? See, I think that's even funnier that it's an audio book that she was listening to, because I thought it was radio commercials and I thought it was hilarious that they just kept coming up every time she got in the car.
Oh right, no, it's I mean, to be honest, I'm not sure how big audiobooks were then, but it's easier to put in a film that she's just listening to it, because it would have been a book most of the time. But yeah, it was meant to be. She's got like the audio tape of this particular book, so everything you hear is an excerpt from that book.
Love it. Now, your film is an intense unraveling, to say the least, a series of unfortunate events spurred on by decisions made out of passion and pain, and it revels in the grey areas of love and the moral playground that your characters find themselves in. Do you like working with flawed characters, deeply flawed characters like you wrote?
Oh, definitely. I don't think people tend to go to the films to watch sensible, well-adjusted characters doing sensible things. It's kind of a bit boring, I think. Yeah, definitely. I'm sure everyone's flawed characters to different extents. And I guess the things I like about films is when the way cinema or, literature, whatever, where it can put you in someone else's experience in a way that we never really get. So films where you're put in the shoes of a character who's doing things which you're like, I would never do this. This is, on the surface, seems like you'd have no connection to, but through the story you sort of are able to maybe find more connections and empathy, I guess.
Empathy, that's the thing. I've read your
empathy machines.
Yes. I've read that your film has been described as a queer crime subgenre. How would you define this subgenre as the filmmaker?
Yeah, I guess it's kind of a neo. I think when I was like emailing Kristen or Ed for the first time trying to describe it to them, I'd sort of be like, it's kind of a romance, thriller, crime, dark comedy, satire kind of thing, which isn't very snappy or quotable. So I'll go with the one you said.
Okay, good. Is it true that you wrote the part of Lou with Kristen Stewart in mind? What was it about her that spoke to you for the role?
I guess that is true. That was sort of from, I didn't know if she'd do it or not, but, when you start writing, you tend to go through the sort of mental exercise of who would the kind of fantasy casting be for this role. And Kristen was always it. She just seemed like a really natural fit for it. I don't know. There didn't seem to be too many other super famous American actresses her kind of age for this character who had that kind of, I don't want to start sort of quantifying it too much. I don't know, like I could just sort of see her being like this kind of moody, aloof kind of heartthrob, but who sort of seems very kind of like closed off and kind of tough, but actually underneath the surface she's incredibly very endearing, neuroses and weird, scrappy kind of busy something. I keep using the word moody. I need to come up with a better word. That's a rubbish word. Moody shell, neurotic, fascinating innards.
That's it. Oh gosh, she's so good in it. But also Katy O'Brian, she already has such a physical and charismatic screen presence. My gosh, she's so good, especially for her first dramatic role as this is. But you made her so much more imposing at different points throughout the film. Take me through the creative choices behind that and how you made it happen, how much of her performance was in camera in that sort of physical manifestation that she's going through.
I mean, obviously, aside from a very obvious bit towards the end where we had a little bit of help with VFX. It's
Yes.
basically all her. Like there's a couple of shots throughout the film where, you know, like the character, as she's training for the competition, she's been introduced to anabolic steroids as well. So there's this slightly Popeye thing going on where you sort of see hints of her like having some kind of bodily transformation. Although we always kind of wanted it to be like, is it the steroids or is it love? Is it Lou? But no, it's all her. I don't know how spoilery you go on this, but there's like one shot where we've sort of doubled her in size. She's great. Like she's just a really fascinating performer because she's got this effortlessly very kind of impressive physicality. I guess the whole sort of like scary action hero stuff she can switch on very effortlessly, but she's actually like sort of as a person she's incredibly sweet and soft and sensitive and vulnerable and all those which we all have, but I guess that's all very close to the surface with her. And I think so for the character just having that very immediate juxtaposition of it shouldn't be surprising that like a muscular person is actually a big softie, but you know I think in film characters that's still quite hopefully not something we're as used to, but that's what I like about her is that sort of duality, I guess.
Yeah.
She's sort of the innocence of the film, even though she sort of does some pretty horrible stuff. Like I think the fact that she's able to sort of convey both those things is the sort of lightness and darkness is very, I think she's wonderful.
That's exactly right. Like how you mentioned before, the empathy machine of movies, you really, really do feel empathy for her. Despite the horrific things that do happen, you are still in her corner, which is extraordinary. Now, Ed Harris's hair as Lou Senior is a choice. But I don't.
Now let's talk about that.
Let's talk about that. But I don't actually want to talk about his extensions or his character's love of grubs.
Very good.
I read that Ed Harris likened your approach as a director to Australian filmmaker Peter Weir. How do you respond to that? Yes.
It's news to me, so I respond with surprise and
I can tell.
gratitude.
Yeah, it's a great accolade.
I've never met or worked with Peter Weir. No, I'm sure. I've never worked or met Peter Weir, so I don't know what he's like to work with, but I'm sure that's a compliment. So thank you, Ed.
Well, you have less than 6 degrees of separation, obviously, through Ed and his work on Truman Show with Peter Weir. So there's your entry. You could say Ed Harris said, I work like you. How's it going? Any tips?
Oh, amazing. Well, that's very cool.
Now, the visual language you and cinematographer Ben Fordsman have forged here is just astonishing. What was your brief to him to deliver on your aesthetic vision for the film?
I can't remember, to be honest. I think because we'd shot St. Maud together, so I think it was probably more of a fluid continuing of whatever conversation we were having with that film in terms of the visual language. I guess both films sort of have a foot in reality and a foot somewhere quite a lot more heightened. And probably with this one, it was kind of like, okay, we can push that a bit more. I guess I remember saying I didn't want it to look too cartoony or clean. Like I think I was talking to him more about like sort of textures and stuff. So saying something kind of like grungy and grimy and sweaty and noirish, sort of having a lot of fun with shadows and contrast and stuff. It was sort of just a fairly feeling it out kind of thing. I sort of deliberately didn't, I mean, I'm sure we, get references of kind of stills from different films and things just as like, this color, this light, but there wasn't, unlike St. Maud, where I think I had much more like a list of, these are the films that are inspiring it visually. I think with this one, we didn't as much. I think because that period of films in America, there's so many films that you could feel easily a bit in the shadow of. So it was more like just, let's not think about those ones or look at them too much.
Well, whatever you have cooking up together as a duo, keep it up because I can't wait to see what you do next, Rose. And congratulations on Love Live Bleeding. It's just astonishing. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Really, really glad you like it.
If you touch her, I'm going to tell them everything you ever did.
Are you threatening me?
Bombastic, pulpy, and dark. You heard it straight from Rose Glass's mouth, and what an understatement, honestly, that description is in the case of Love Lies Bleeding.
Just don't you call it moody.
Yes, it is another word for moody. Yeah, that's right. I still can't get over the incredible performances of Stewart and O'Brian, especially the physicality of O'Brian that she brings to the role. And not just in the way she looks or her bodybuilding, but the way she meets the visual effects and those more fantastical elements.
She really did an incredible job. And Love Lies Bleeding is in Australian cinemas, so you can see it for yourself from March 14.
As always, friends, thank you so much for listening.
We'll catch you next time. We are now on YouTube, guys, where you will find our latest celebrity video interviews. Simply search Popcorn Podcast with Lee and Tim and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a single one.